able to publish our data. And so that's what this CPD is all about. So we have a very, important guest speaker who will be addressing this topic for us. And we are blessed this afternoon to be joined together with an associate professor and the head of department of the Health Professions Education and Innovative Learning, School of Medicine, University of Development Studies. Professor Victor Mogri has over a decade of experience in health research, and he has 2 PhDs, one in behavioral science from the University of Newcastle, Callahan, and then he has the other PhD in nutrition education from the University of Maastricht in Netherlands. And he was the individual consultant for the development and pilot of country-specific food-based nutrition education curriculum, health and nutrition sector for UNICEF Ghana. Our guest speaker has won numerous grants, examples of which I'll mention a few. We have the University Partnership Initiative grant by the US Embassy Accra, which is a recent grant he's on in 2023. And he also won the grant for the impact of climate change on the health of vulnerable populations, a pilot study in a last mile district of rural Ghana, University of Southampton in UK. A few of his most recent publications are Preparedness of Medical Students to Provide Nutrition Care Following a Nutrition Education Intervention, which was published in the BMC research article. And then his other research publication is Nutrition Knowledge is Associated with the Consumption of Iron-Rich Foods, a survey among pregnant women from a rural district of northern Ghana. And it was published in Nutrition and Metabolic Insights article. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, I would want us to kindly type a welcome in the chat box to welcome our esteemed professor, Professor Victor Mogri. Prof, over to you, and we hope to have an exciting CPD this afternoon.
Yeah, thank you so much. I hope everybody can hear me.
Yes, we can. It's loud and clear.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. I must say that I'm excited to be here today. The Ghana Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics is, a home for me. Although in my affiliation, you described me as being at the School of Medicine at UDS, but I'm actually someone with a background in nutrition. So I'm a member of the Ghana Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics. So as you say that I have actually come home. As you indicated in when you were describing my background and experience, I'm someone who's advocating for nutrition. I am actually an associate professor in nutrition education and training. So I'm looking at how we can improve the training when it comes to nutrition education, when it comes to encouraging individuals to be able to adopt healthy dietary habits. Those are some of the things that I'm highly passionate about and have been looking at, trying to come up with ways by which we can be able to encourage nutrition behavior change. We can be able to encourage or improve the training of our health workers when it comes to nutrition, especially those in the front line that are involved with providing nutrition care. So as I say that, I'm actually at home and I'm excited to be here. Yeah, so this is just by way of opening remarks. I don't know whether we can go ahead and begin the session or there's something more to add.
Well, if you can go ahead. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. So I will try to see that, or I'll try to make sure that we're able to follow the time, about maybe an hour of presentation, and then we'll also see whether we can be able to have some time for some questions. I would like it to be more interactive. And I believe that all of us, it's not the first time that we're doing research, or it's not the first time that we're attending a session about research. So it will be more of interactive. And then I also try as much as possible to bring it to the most simplest level, to make it very, very simple for you to understand that research is not anything that is complex. It's a very simple process that we can be able to follow and have our, and be able to solve the societal problems that we have with regards to that. So the topic is steps in conducting groundbreaking health research. When I saw the topic, I was like, okay, this is about research, but somehow you've added what we call groundbreaking research. So I said, okay, we'll look at it from that point of view to see how we can have groundbreaking research that we intend to have. So the objectives of the presentation is to explain health research, or just say research in general, to describe the scientific process or the methods, outline the key aspects of a research proposal, explain the key sections of the methods of data collection, outline data analysis, and then describe ways of interpreting and presenting scientific findings. Because when you finish conducting the research, you don't just keep it in your computer. You have to find a way of sharing it with others. So we'll also be looking at that. So I'm sure we all know what research is. It's just the systematic collection, analysis, and interpretation of data that is to answer a certain question. Because you don't just go about doing research when you don't have a question to answer. But the process of you following to answer that question must be a systematic process. If it is not systematic, then we cannot describe it as research. So there have to be a systematic process of you collecting the data, analyzing, and then interpreting the data. In fact, you should also follow a systematic process of identifying the problem that you really want to solve. So research actually follows a number of steps that we normally describe them as the cascading scientific steps that you need to follow. We describe them as cascading due to the fact that one step leads to the next step. So they are actually iterative. If you don't complete one step, it will be difficult for you to move to the next step. So we need to be able to identify this. And with this, we should be able to conduct research. Now, we're saying that groundbreaking. What is groundbreaking? So before, when I was preparing, I said, let me search online and know what groundbreaking is all about. Because we said groundbreaking research. So it is making new discoveries using new methods, making new discoveries and using what new methods. And that is what the Oxford Dictionary or the Oxford Learners Dictionary explains it to be. So it means that for research to be groundbreaking, you should be using what new methods, new discoveries. You should be able to come up with something that is original. And that can be found in the next definition, which is from the Cambridge Dictionary, who says well, original and important, showing a new way of doing or thinking about things. So it is not only a new way of you investigating that particular problem, but it is also a new way of you thinking about it. So if you do your research and you bring about evidence, like for example, in your facility, wherever you are working, you have a lot of children with severe acute malnutrition dying early in the morning or something. Then you said, I have to really find out. Then you did an investigation and found out that probably they are dying because in the mornings it's very cold and maybe they may have hypothermia or something like that. That is a finding that probably at your facility, a lot of people might not have actually known. So it is a new information that you're actually bringing. And we can describe it as groundbreaking for your setting. Although it may not be groundbreaking for everyone, but in your setting, it can be used as groundbreaking. You can also use groundbreaking to describe things which you think are significant. So sometimes, depending on your own perspective, if you think that what you are doing is actually significant, then you can describe it as groundbreaking. But one thing is to take note is that research is always about peer review. It's not only one person looking at it, but others will also have to look at it and agree with you whether what you are doing is actually important or it is significant and it is groundbreaking. So when we say health research, it's just research that we conduct in the health settings. So nutrition research is an example of health research, dietetics research, public health research, all of that. I mean, research at the clinical setting, all of those ones are examples of health research. So why do we research at all? Why is it important for us to research? It is for us to do research. It may be as a result of the fact that you need to identify certain challenges, that there is a challenge that you need to find a solution to that particular challenge. That can be a major reason why you are doing research. The desire to get intellectual joy of doing some creative work, especially with those in academia. Sometimes when you are able to find the solution to a problem, or when you are able to investigate a particular situation, you get joy from that particular process. You get that intellectual joy, and it adds to your credentials, it adds to your promotion. And I'm saying in the health sector too, when you also do that, it will help in improving the provision of care, improving nutrition care that you actually provide people. Desire to get respectability, directives of the government, employment conditions, all of that. There are reasons why you can, why you should actually conduct research. To validate intuition, you are thinking about something and say, probably this may be the reason. People are not eating healthy because maybe they don't have enough money. That is an intuition. So you need to design a research that you would implement. And then through that research, you can either confirm your intuition or not. You can either confirm your guess. You can either confirm your hypothesis that people are not eating healthy because they don't have money. So it is important that we design research to be able to answer some of these things. Sometimes it can be to improve methods. It can be the demands of the job. As I said, with those in academia, it is either you research and publish or you perish. You perish means that if you don't publish and get your promotion, after some time, your contract will finish and they'll ask you to leave the job, or you should go and look for a job elsewhere. It is also to provide publication, and then you can also be able to patent it. The research that you come up with, it can come up with some new discovery, and you are the first person to really come up with it, and you can decide to actually patent that work. That can give you a lot of money. So when we say research, what are the key things that should be found in a particular activity that you can describe it as being research? As I indicated from the definition, it should be systematic. So all the steps must be interrelated. As I indicated, there must be a cascading series of steps, interrelated, iterative. Yeah? They should be logical, agreeing with the principles of logic. It should be empirical. That means that it should be based on evidence, that the methods that you are using have been proven to be ones that can be able to get the information that you are looking for. Later on, when we look at the methods section, we will talk more on this. There should be objectives. Those methods should actually be replicable. That means that somebody can be able to pick those same methods, go to the same community, conduct the same work, look for those same study participants, conduct the work, and come up with the same results that you have actually been able to come up with. So if your research work doesn't have, or if your activity doesn't have these characteristics, then you cannot describe it as research. Research doesn't mean that you should just get up at any point, you get to the roadside and start talking to people, and you say that you are getting information. We don't call that research. And for you to be able to have all of this, it means that you need to plan. So proper research is built upon proper planning of the research process. So what are the 6 phases of research? Problem definition, literature review, selection of the research design, the subjects, data collection techniques, data gathering, data processing, and then interpretation and reporting of the findings. And then some will even add action research. That is when you come out with the findings, what action have you taken? So when you take that action and solve the problem, it doesn't end there, it begins again. So the research process is actually in the form of a cycle that you never finish finding answers to a particular solution. When you finish, the fact that you have finished your work doesn't mean that that is an end to that area. Others can also continue to build upon what you have done. And that is what we describe the research process as being in the form of a cycle or a cyclical process, as you can see in this particular diagram or this this outline that you can see here with regards to the process of research. So we'll start looking at each of these steps, and then we'll throw more light on that. So prioritizing and selecting the research topic. When you prioritize and when you select it, there's a need for you to do or to review the literature that will either agree with what you have identified as a problem or disagree with you. You need to develop a research proposal. As I said, there's no way you can be able to have proper research when there is no proposal. The proposal will tell you what you are expected to do, the things that you should look out for, so that when you get to the field, you will not lose out anything. Then when that is done, implementation of the study, data collection, data processing, and all of that, we need to take note of that. So as I said, we'll start looking at each of these steps. So the first one, which is looking at prioritizing and selecting a research topic. So for you to decide on the research topic, or for you to decide on the problem that you want to solve, you need to take note of whether that particular problem, what is its impact on health? How many people get killed or how many people die as a result of that condition? What is the public health significance of it? So like, for example, we normally talk about malnutrition. How serious is malnutrition? How many people in the world die from malnutrition? Malnutrition in children. How many people or how many children under 5 die as a result of what? Malnutrition? How many children are affected by malnutrition? You need to describe that impact that it has on health. If you're not able to describe that, then there is no need for you to go and investigate that problem, because research involves money. And if it is not something that would help solve any of our health problems, I don't think anybody will be ready to give you money to do that. You have to find out, are there available interventions? Are there proposed solutions? Then you also have to think about the feasibility of the research. If you say you want to go to the moon and go and know what kinds of food items are there or something, I mean, I'm just giving an example. Is it feasible for you to be able to do that? Do you have the money living in Ghana here that you want to go to the moon? It's not possible. So you have to think of research topics that you can be able to work upon based on your ability, based on the amount of money available to you. The cost effectiveness is also important, the applicability of the results. And then most of all, make sure that you are not doing something that has been done already. And that is where the literature review would actually come in to be able to help you not to duplicate what someone have done already. So the problem should be sequential enough to warrant investigation. If it is already a problem that you can read the literature and find the answers, then there's no need for you to investigate it. So that is why I say it is important that you actually do your literature review and all of that. When you are following a quantitative approach, you know there are 2 major paradigms when it comes to research. You have the qualitative, which tries to look at people's perceptions, people's understanding of things. You are using words to describe the entire results and things like that. The quantitative is the one we make use of numbers, we make use of objective methods, we make use of using questionnaires, experimental studies. All of those ones, they fall under quantitative. So when your research is about quantitative, you are looking at the relationship among the variables, their associations, how is one related to the other. But with a qualitative approach, you are trying to find out why and how certain events occur. Why are people not able to eat a healthy diet, although they are growing healthy foods? It is only qualitative approaches that you can use to be able to answer some of these questions. So you need to always be able to know which ones or the research area that you are looking at for. So as I said, literature review is very, very important, and it is linked to what you helping to identify the research question or the research topic that you want to investigate. So a literature review is just looking at you going into the literature to find out what has been investigated with regards to the research topic that you want to look at. Through literature review, you'll be able to identify the gaps that are in the literature. You'll be able to know the extent to which they have been able to solve that problem. You'll be able to know whether that particular problem, is it applicable in your situation? Is it applicable in your setting? Will you be able to solve that problem with the kind of research methods that you want to look at? Through literature review, you also be able to know the kinds of research methods they use to investigate that particular question. So a review can take several forms depending on the time that you have with regards to your research. If you are a PhD student and all of that, then the best approach may be for you to do a systematic review. And I'm sure we may be able to get another time whereby we can look at the steps in conducting a systematic review, because that is also another form of research method that you can be able to look at. Meta-analysis, release reviews, scoping reviews, all of these are approaches that you can be able to use. But for you to decide on the topic you want to do, sometimes you don't need to follow all of these systematic processes. You may just do a rapid review. You just type the topic on Google, and then you scan through some of the researches that would actually come out. It is not an extensive approach, but it is just something to give you an idea as to how the research topic is and what has been done on it. And probably later on, you can then be able to do an extensive literature review. So the literature reviews will be able to consolidate known information. You should inform your research decisions. You can also use the literature to argue for funding, especially when you are doing research that you don't have the funds to be able to do it. Most of the time when we are writing for grants, we always have to explain why they should give us the grant. What is the research gap? And we support that sort of descriptions or that sort of discussion with the literature, because you need to use the literature to convince the funder that nothing has been done in this area or limited information has been done in this area. So it is important that you do a proper literature review. You identify areas of prior research to prevent duplication, helps you to find out what others have learned and reported on the problem you want, and this may assist you in refining your statement of the problem. It helps you to become more familiar with the various research methods, because when you go through the literature, you know the kinds of research methods that they have adopted, so that you can also be able to either repeat the same thing or you try to revise what they have done. So it gives the theoretical rationale of problem that you are studying or the problem that you are investigating, what research has been done and how it relates to your problem. And then while you are looking at the literature review, don't just take everything hook, line, and sinker. Don't just take anything because it is published online. You consider that work to be of good quality. There are a lot of works that are published online. There are even a lot of work that are published in renowned journals, but it is not of any good quality. If you know the processes by which sometimes we go through for articles to be accepted and all of that, sometimes some of them, they go through and they get published. Meanwhile, the quality is not that good. So you need to assess the quality of the literature that you are going to include. So it's important that you try to assess that. As I said, we can have another session that will look at all of these specific areas of assessing quality of research articles that you can be able to include. So you have to be able to check to see if your idea is original. As I said, from the literature review, get the articles that will be able to support it, read those articles and their references. And most of these, they will be very vital when you are actually writing your reports, especially when you are doing your discussion of your data, your interpretation of the results that you have had, and you are linking it with others. The literature that you have gotten at the beginning can actually help you with that. You, those who have done your master's and probably your undergraduate thesis that you did research, you can actually agree with me that when you do proper literature review, it will actually help you in your discussion. It will help you to refine your objectives and all of that. So as I've indicated, there is no way you can be able to do proper research when there is no plan, when there is no protocol. There should be a blueprint that would tell you the steps you should take. So it is important that you write a proposal or a protocol that will help you to be able to conduct your research very, very well. So in this presentation, we are not only looking at the steps involved in research, we're also looking at some of the key things that you should also include in your proposal, and some of the key things that you should also look out for when you are even conducting the research. You know, the proposal is just what you propose to do and what you intend to do that you would be looking at. So your proposal describes your proposed plan of work, what you intend to study, the scope and the research questions that you want to investigate. It is within this proposal that you write all those things. You have agreed on the research area you want to investigate on. You have identified the problem, and then you don't have to put it down. You don't have to write it down in a proposal, because later on you have to submit the proposal for ethical approval. Because in health research, you just can't just get up and start asking people questions, interviewing them, taking their body weight and all of that without ethical approval. So we all have to take note of that, that whatever you are going to do, once it is research involving humans and you are thinking of publishing it and all of that, you need to get ethics. Ethical approval is very, very important. So in the proposal, you explain why the topic needs to be studied, the significance of it, when you will be able to complete the work. The timeline is also indicated on it. Research is time-bound, so you have to be able to indicate how long it will take for you to be able to finish your research. So the purpose of a proposal is just to justify and plan your research project. As I said, normally I describe this as somebody giving a marriage proposal to the girlfriend. In the marriage proposal, you will tell her what you intend to do when the two of you come together, the dreams you will share together, the projects you will work together, the family that you bring up together, and all those things. That is what you put in the proposal. So a proposal, a research proposal, so indicate all of these things. What is the objective? What are the methods you want to use to be able to meet that objective? And all of that. That is what should be put into your proposal. Sometimes when some people hear of proposal, they begin to shiver, they begin to become scared and all that. It's not anything difficult. It's just proposing, telling people that this is what you want to do. And then you write it very well. And sometimes don't just say that this is what you want to do. It should be proven, it should be supported, so that another panel can look at it and agree with you. So demonstrate that you understand how to conduct the research. When we read the proposal, we'll be able to know whether this person, you know your left from your right or not. You know what you are really investigating or not. So the proposal is very, very important. And with the proposal, you'll be able to identify shortfalls, challenges early enough so that when you get to the field, you will not have any serious challenge. You would have known how to overcome some of those challenges. So your proposal will have a title. A good title should be short, accurate, and concise. It should make the central objective of the study clear to the reader. So it is important to specify what population will be investigated and where it will be conducted. Most of the sections I have tried to come up with examples that can be able to support you, so that even after the presentation, I can share the slides with you and you'll be able to know some of the examples that, or some of the ways by which you can be able to do that. It is also important you orient your readers to your research topic, indicate the type of study you conduct. Is it a cross-sectional study? Is it a case control? And all of that, you need to be able to indicate that. So this is an example of a study, the title of a proposal that I submitted some time ago, which is Adherence to Diabetes Self-Care Behaviors Among Ghanaian Adults Living with Type 2 Diabetes, a cross-sectional study. You remember I said you should be able to orient your readers to the research topic. You need to identify the research population, and you need to also indicate the study design. And even the key variables that you are you are actually going to measure, you need to indicate that. So in this example, adherence to diabetes self-care is what we investigated. Diabetes self-care behaviors. The population was what? Ghanaian type 2 diabetes patients, or people living with what? Type 2 diabetes. Then in what design do we use? A cross-sectional study. Sometimes you can go further and indicate the specific study area, whether it's in northern Ghana, or it's in Tamale, and all of that. There are two schools of thoughts with regards to that. Others argue that you should indicate a specific area. Others to also say that no, don't indicate a specific area. When you go to the study area, you can be able to get that information. Because sometimes when you indicate a specific area, the applicability of your findings and all of that sometimes can be affected. So that is an example of that. Your proposals will have an abstract, and the abstract is the last thing that you usually write. And in the abstract, you indicate, or it's a brief description of the introduction, the statement of the problem, the background of the study, research questions, hypothesis, and all of that. That is what you put in the, what do you call it, in the abstract. So you would need to have an introduction in your proposal or your research topic that you want to do. There's a need for you to have an introduction. That is also what we also describe as the background. And this background, you can be able to write it well if you have done very good literature review. So it will give you the focus area of the research. It helps you to be able to convince the reader of the relevance of the study, describe the broad foundation of your study, whereby you provide sufficient background for the readers, indicate the general scope of your project, and then you also provide an overview of the sections that will appear in your proposal. So sometimes in the introduction, you say that, going forward, this proposal will talk about the research objectives, the methods that you use. You can always introduce that in that. But as I said, it is kind of providing background information that will lead towards you stating your research problem. So the research problem is looking at what is the gap that needs to be filled and what is the problem that needs to be solved. So depending on the requirements of whoever you are writing the research for, some of them can let you have a background section standing alone. Others too can also say that, and then a problem statement also standing alone or a different section. Sometimes they can ignore that. Let's say if you are submitting an article for publication, you don't have separate sections for what introduction and statement of problem. All of it is embedded into one, which is either introduction or background, depending on the requirements of the journal in which you are sending the work. So within it, you have to embed the problem. So the statement of the problem is very, very important, that you try to explain what is the gap that needs to be filled. And this one can only be done very well if you have done proper review of the literature, so that you can be able to consciously state the gap that needs to be filled or what is the problem that needs to be solved. Because as I said earlier on, you need to investigate in the literature and find out whether somebody has not already answered the question that you want to answer. So state the problem clearly in a paragraph. And we said we are looking at what? Groundbreaking research. So groundbreaking research, you should be able to explain your problem in such a way that people will believe that it is groundbreaking research that you are doing. It is new evidence, it is new information that you are adding, or you are increasing our understanding of whatever is happening or whatever you are interested in investigating. You limit the variables that you want to address in stating your problem and all of that. So consider the problem, consider framing the problem as a question. That is an approach that you can also use. You decide to frame it in the form of a question. Like, for example, what do we already know about the reason why people don't eat fruits and vegetables, although they grow fruits and vegetables in their homes? So you can put it in the form of a question to be able to establish that. You need to indicate the magnitude of the problem, the probable causes, the issues around it, and all of that. That is some of the things that you can use to state your problem. This is just a slide showing the logical sequence by which you can use to be able to state your problem. So there is an example here that is stating the problem. I'm not going to read everything. As I said, we'll share the slides with you. But this particular one is taken from one of our published articles that was looking at dietary intake among pregnant women in a certain district or one of the rural districts that we have in northern Ghana. So you can see that the problem is where I have highlighted. We said, well, however, evidence on the dietary practices of pregnant women and its determinants is limited. You see that I'm choosing the words very well. I said it's limited. I'm not saying that it's non-existent. If you say that it is non-existent, you have to be able to explain why you are saying that it is non-existent. But we're saying that limited. So you don't just leave it as limited. A lot of people like doing that. They just say, oh, it's limited, without showing the reason why they say that it is limited. So we went further and said, in our review of the literature, we came across only 3 studies from Ghana. And those 3 studies are cited. As you can see there, the numbers that you consider, the 18, 21, 22, is citations. That is when you are using the Vancouver style of referencing. So, and a literature, and a few studies from other parts of sub-Saharan Africa. So we did not only end in Ghana, we also went to other parts of what Africa, investigating the phenomena. And which phenomena are we referring to? The dietary practices of what? Pregnant women. Then we went further to even explain one of the studies from Ghana followed a qualitative approach. And although the other 2 studies use a quantitative approach, one of them did not investigate the nutrition-related knowledge and attitudes of pregnant women and how these may affect the dietary intake of pregnant women, and the other study investigated these, but among pregnant women in Accra, not in northern Ghana. They did that in what? In Accra, which is economically different from the setting of the current study. So you need to explain why you think that there is a gap in the literature, why you think that we still have to find answers to some of these things. So we then went further and said, this study investigated nutrition-related knowledge, attitudes towards nutrition, and their association with dietary intake among pregnant women from what? Rural Ghana. So because we have indicated some of the limitations, that there are some studies already, but they are from urban Ghana, from Accra. Some of them use qualitative approaches, but you want to use a quantitative approach. It is enough for you, or it is a very important justification for you to say that another study used this approach, but I'm going to use a different approach, because those different approaches can give you different findings, can give you different answers. So it is important that we try to state that. So when you state your problem, now I don't know whether you are seeing the linkages of the cascading effects that are made mention when it comes to what? The scientific process or the research process. You realize that immediately I finished talking about the problem or the gap in this example, I went ahead and stated what? The objective, which is what? The study investigated nutrition-related knowledge and all of that. So the problem statement, when you do it very well, your statement of objectives will not be a challenge at all. So in stating your objectives, especially when you are writing your thesis, you need to have what? A broad objective or a broad goal, and then you then have what? Your specific objectives. Or if you have research questions, there may be a broad research questions, and then you also have your specific research questions. So the goals describe the aim of the work in broad terms. The objectives, they are more specific, and they are directly related to the research that you are looking at. So your goals and objectives must be stated at the very beginning of the study, since they will guide the investigator during the process of formulating the research questions. They will also help in the prioritization process. They will enable the reader or the consumer of the work to judge whether the investigator had achieved these objectives or not. So the objectives are very, very important. It's the objectives that will determine the kind of research methods you should use. It's the objectives that would determine the sort of data analysis that you should use to be able to do your analysis, or the kind of statistical tools that you should use. So you need to be able to focus your study, narrow it down, avoid the collection of data which are not necessary, because it is in this one that will determine the kinds of variables that you should investigate and what you should be interested in following. So properly formulated specific objectives will facilitate the development of your research methodology and will help to orient the collection, analysis, interpretation, and utilization of your data. So this will be closely related. This will cover all aspects of the problem. This will be very specific, as I said, and then through that one, you can be able to get your research methods and all of that. I think we are all aware of this SMART objectives thing, that they should be specific, they should be measurable, achievable, relevant, and time bound. If you go saying to understand this, how do you measure understand? But when you say describe or to assess or to evaluate, they are more specific and all of that. And even the kinds of specific, objectives that you set is also dependent on whether you are following a qualitative or a quantitative approach. If you are following a qualitative approach, then you need to be using words like to explore, to explain, and all of that. Those are qualitative. So, or if you are asking questions, you are looking at the why, the how, and all of that. Those are qualitative approaches. Quantitative approaches, you just say evaluate, investigate, assess, and those ones are direct, and you can be able to look at that. If you also have a research hypothesis, especially when you are doing an interventional study, you need to have a research hypothesis. The interventional study life, for example, we did a study among medical students whereby we gave them nutrition education intervention. And at the end, we measured their knowledge. We measured knowledge at the baseline, and then at the end of the intervention, we measured knowledge. So we had a hypothesis like the nutrition education intervention will significantly improve the knowledge of those who participated in the intervention. And all of, so that is a hypothesis that we actually stated. So mostly hypothesis is very good when you are using an experimental design. If you are going with a cross-sectional design, I know that some people make use of that, or they state research hypothesis in their, in a design that is a cross-sectional one. But usually research hypothesis doesn't fit so well if it is a cross-sectional design. If it's an experimental one, that is fine. And we'll start looking at study designs later on. So the research hypothesis will help you identify which one is your independent variable, which one is a dependent variable, to be able to indicate which one is the outcome, and all of that. Through that, you can then be able to do that. So the hypothesis translates the problem statement into a precise, clear prediction of expected outcomes. So as I said, we'll say that, the intervention will improve the nutrition knowledge of the medical students. The problem would have been that we don't have knowledge, or there's no evidence to show whether this intervention is effective in improving the knowledge of the students, the nutrition knowledge of the students. So when you then put in the form of hypothesis, you say that the intervention will improve or will have a significant impact on the knowledge. It's through the research hypothesis that you then choose certain research methods, and you decide whether you accept the null hypothesis or you reject the null hypothesis. The null hypothesis is that within the two groups, those that went through the nutrition education intervention and those that didn't go through the nutrition intervention, there is no differences in their nutrition-related knowledge. That is what the null hypothesis says. There is no differences in their nutrition-related knowledge. So that is the null hypothesis. But if you do your statistical analysis and find that those who took part in the intervention have significantly higher knowledge scores than those who didn't take part in that intervention, then we reject the null hypothesis because it doesn't agree with what the null hypothesis. The null hypothesis says there's no differences. But we are only accepting the null hypothesis when we don't find differences. But if at the end we found differences, then we'll reject the null hypothesis and rather take what? The alternative hypothesis. So these are more examples here that you can look at, which we are looking at family medicine. We say they were looking at communicable diseases, and the goal of the research was to contribute to the reduction of hepatitis in Ghana through studying public perceptions. And the objective was to assess the awareness, knowledge, and attitudes of the general public towards hepatitis in Ghana. This is actually a cross-sectional design and all of that. But if it is an interventional design, as I've indicated, you can see the research hypothesis here, which looks at what the risk of myocardial infarction among patients treated with hypocholesteromic agent A is lower than the risk among controls not treated with what? Hypocholesteromic agents. As I say, it's similar to the example that I gave with regards to the nutrition education intervention. So that is where you have a research hypothesis because it is an interventional study. I mean, this is more examples. So when you pick the slides, you can be able to look at them. So if you finish your research objectives, you finish stating your research questions, the next logical step to take is to state your research methods. What methods are you going to use to be able to answer your research questions or to be able to meet your research objectives? That is where the methodology now comes in. And the methodology is very, very critical. But you cannot have a very good methodology if your objectives are not precise, if your objectives are not smart. So as I said, each of the steps depend on what the previous one. So when you don't do the previous one well, then the whole thing is going to go down. So you need to introduce the overall methodological approach. Are you using a qualitative or a quantitative approach? What sort of design are you using? Which study area? All of that. That is what the methodology is all about. In the methodology, you also explain how you analyze and you interpret the data. So in the methods, those are some of the things that you have to take note of. Sometimes, if it is a new methodology that you are using, you need to explain the theoretical framework that is supporting that new methodology. So the method section allows the reader to understand how the data were collected. If we are talking about the proposal, we'll say that how the data will be collected and to judge for yourself or for the one who is reading it to judge for herself. It should be detailed enough for a good researcher to be able to replicate. The readers will have enough information that he or she could replicate your research with the same or similar population and arrive at the same results. And as I said, if it is a new methodology that you are using, you need to provide background and rationale for such new methodology. When there are limitations, you need to explain how you overcome some of those limitations in your methods. So usually we'll talk about research methodology and research design. Methodology concerns how the design is implemented. Mostly we'll talk about methodology when we're using when we're using qualitative approaches. That is where we'll talk about methodology. Whether you are using a phenomenology, you are using ethnography, you are using observation, those ones, that is where we normally use methodology. Sometimes we just use them anyhow, but methodology actually goes with qualitative approaches. When we come to quantitative approaches, we'll talk about methods. So methods we use for what quantitative approaches. So please, when next you are writing some of these things, take note. Methods is for quantitative approaches and methodology is for the qualitative approaches. So these are examples of types of methods that you can use: laboratory-based research, field-based research, library-based research, research in the hospital setting, and all of that. But it doesn't mean that in the field you cannot have qualitative-based research. You can still have qualitative-based research. It doesn't mean that in the hospital you cannot have qualitative-based research. In fact, for you to decide whether you should follow a qualitative or a quantitative approach, all of it depends on your research questions or your research objectives. Usually I meet people who say they are actually quantitative people. They don't want to do anything about qualitative. But I think that we should actually be pragmatism. That is, depending on the research objective, you decide whether you go qualitative or you decide whether you go quantitative. So it is important that we learn both approaches, the qualitative and the quantitative approaches, and all of that. So these are examples of methodologies when it comes to the qualitative approaches: ethnography, phenomenology, grounded theory, ethnomethodology, all of these things. There are different ways by which they go by this sort of methods or collecting the data. So ethnography, you go and interview them, you immerse yourself within the culture, within the people, and then you're able to get the evidence that you are looking for. Yes. So what are the key sections of the methods or the methodology, depending on, you should talk about the study area or the location or the study setting, the study design, the study population, the data collection procedures, the data collection tools, the plan of data processing and analysis, and all of that. We'll be looking at each of these and all of that. So the study area, you have to explain which area that the study is going to be done. If it's going to be done in the Tamale metropolis, you say that this study is going to be conducted in the Tamale metropolis. Describe where the Tamale metropolis is located. Sometimes you can include a map. You can give latitudes and longitudes and whatever. You can tell us how far you will travel from Accra to get to Tamale, the distance and all of that. Because sometimes when you are going to send it international, a lot of people are aware of Accra as the capital city. So you have to look at how you can be able to relate that. Sometimes you can give a brief information about the population of the area, the kinds of social problems they have, and all of that. So this map here that you are seeing here was actually designed by somebody who have never been to Tamale, but the person used Google Map and was able to design this. It was a study where were planning to look at the food environment in the Tamale metropolis. And this person sat somewhere in, I think, China or so, and was able to do this. It was a collaborator that we were working with, and then with some other US partners. And then he designed this. And through that, he was able to identify places like Mickey Mart that we have in Tamale, and was able to know where you can find, these small supermarkets and all of that, where you can find fresh foods, where you cannot find this and all of that. He was able to do that. So we've now advanced in such a way that Google Map, when you use it very well, you can be able to get some of these maps that you can include in your study area that you can be able to use. So this is an example of describing a study area. This was part of a proposal of a study that we are conducting, a community-based study that we are conducting in the Tamale metropolis, Tolon, and then in Sola. So in the proposal, these were some of the things we described to describe the study area. So the study will be conducted in the Tamale metropolis. The Tamale metropolis is located in the central part of the northern region and includes both Tamale and all of that. The metropolis contains 115 communities and all of that. I think this one is not that study that I'm talking about. I think this is a different study that we looked at. But you see that it describes some of these things. It talks about there is a persistent lack of basic social and economic infrastructure, such as good road networks, public schools, health facilities. It even goes further to talk about the household size per 6.3 persons and all of that, and then the population. So those are some of the things that you can be able to put in your study area or describing your study area. The description of the study area is very, very important so that another person can be able to locate that area. And if he wants to come and prove or validate what you have done, he can be able to know the study area which you have done. So you've stated your study area, you need to study, or you need to state the study design. So the study design is the methodology that is used to collect the information to address the research question. It's like the framework. The study design will actually determine the kinds of data collection tools you should use, the kinds of approaches that you should use. So a specific plan or a protocol for conducting the study, which allows the investigator to translate the conceptual hypothesis. I have been talking about certain key terms like a variable, exposure, and an outcome. These are very, very important because we're talking about what study designs. A variable represents a measurable attribute that varies across the study unit. So if I want to measure the height of individual, that is a variable. If I want to take the weight of children, that is a variable. If I want to know whether they are male or female, that is a variable. The age, all of that, those are variables because they change within the unit of what measurements. Exposure refers to what the risk factors or the independent factors that you are looking at, the predictor variables that would relate to what the outcome or that contributes to the outcome. So the outcome refers to the appearance, the characteristics that is developed as a result of what? The exposure. So if I'm looking at the prevalence of stunting among children under 5, stunting is my outcome. And probably I want to know factors that are associated with what? Stunting. Then I'll look at what? the age of the children, the gender of the children, all of that. Those are independent variables, or those are what exposure variables that I'm interested in investigating. So those are some of the things. So when you take study designs, they are put into two broad areas. You have observational and you have experimental or interventional. Observational means that you are not manipulating the variables. You are not interfering in anything. You just go a point in time and measure them. Measure both the outcome and the whatever at the same time. So observational, you don't control anything and all of that. Observational can actually be non-analytical and analytical kind of testing. So this is a diagram here showing the different study designs. You have all studies, then you have the descriptive, which look at survey, cross-sectional, qualitative. Those ones are descriptives. Analytical means that you are going to use certain statistical tools and all of that. So you have to describe it as what? Analytical. So sometimes a cross-sectional study can actually be described as analytical cross-sectional study. Because if in that cross-sectional study, you want to know factors that are associated with stunting in children, you are going to use statistical tools. So those statistical tools make that kind of cross-sectional study analytical cross-sectional study. So you realize that analytical, it can be experimental and observational. Almost every experimental study is analytical. That is why you have the experimental studies being under them, and it is described as what? It is under analytical. And then observational cohort study can be analytical one. As I said, the differences is just the use of statistical tools to find associations, to find inferences, and all of that. So case reports, I think these are self-explanatory, where I'll just skip a number of them. A case report is just a detailed report of the specific features of a particular case or a participant. So especially those who are dietitians, probably somebody comes there with a special case of a diet-related issue, which you haven't seen before. You can pick it as a case report, work together with the doctors, whatever, and then you see how the person was treated, the outcome, and you can write that as an article. That is after you have gotten consent from that particular patient, that it is a special case that you are looking at. We use case reports to be able to identify rare conditions, or it's always the one that can be able to bring a condition that a lot of people are not aware of. Cross-sectional studies, we all know cross-sectional studies. I think almost everyone here have done a cross-sectional study where you measure both the outcome and independent variables at the same time, or at the same point in time, that you can be able to measure that. Is it cheap and the simplest, is ethically safe, and all of that. Case control, as I said, whether you use cross-sectional case control depends on your research questions or your research objectives. That is why this one is following after this, after you've looked at the objectives and whatever, before you can then decide on this. Case control is looking at you identifying people who have the condition and compared with another group that don't have the condition. Then you measure the characteristics of the cases as against the controls. And then through that, you can be able to look at that. So most hospital settings, interventions, they try to use case controls and they are able to get whatever they are. These are diagrams explaining more of the case control. The cohort study, you follow them either backwards or you follow them into the future. So when you're following them into the future, it's a prospective one. When you are following them back, it's a retrospective one. These designs are good, but sometimes they are quite expensive to be able to follow. So those are some of, this is another diagram showing this kind of study design that you can be able to follow. So those are more examples that you can see, diagrams that you can see, and all of that. So the limitations of the cohort study is that sometimes it may be difficult to identify the controls. Exposure may be linked to a hidden confounder and all that, although it is ethically safe. And sometimes it can be difficult to blind those people that are not supposed to know what the intervention is. Then experimental means that the investigator control over the allocation of exposure, its associated factors, and observation of the outcome. It is more powerful than other study designs. It may be classified into two major types. randomized controlled trials and non-randomized controlled trials. So you are going, you are intervening, you are experimenting. And sometimes people think that intervention is just only about giving them a special diet, but giving them counseling, giving them nutrition advice, health education, they are all intervention approaches that you can be able to adopt. Randomized and non-randomized, non-randomized control trial is how you decide who should go to the control group and who should go to what, the intervention group. The control group is one that will not receive the intervention at all. The intervention group is the one that will receive the intervention. And this method is powerful in the sense that you will be able to measure those who have those who have got the intervention. You are comparing them, and through that, you are able to directly measure the impact of the intervention. And you can argue that it is the intervention that have brought about the changes. So as I said, randomization is just using a random process to describe who have received the intervention and who have not received the intervention and all of that. You can decide to make it non-randomized. There's also what we call the crossover design. Crossover design means that somebody is with a control group, and as the intervention progresses, the person moves to what? The intervention group, and then somebody at some point will also become a control. And all that is a crossover design. This is quite a complex one. I haven't had an experience of using this design before, but I know that with time we can get a study that will look at that. So that is also another, a diagram showing the crossover design. So non-randomized means that you are not using random process to allocate who should receive the intervention and who should not receive the intervention. So you can use another approach. Probably it's based on a previous study. I remember there was a study we conducted among school children in the Tamale metropolis. And what we did was we did not allocate the school children based on a random process. We looked at a previous study that we conducted that looked at the prevalence of obesity in those schools, childhood obesity in those schools. And we picked those schools that had the highest prevalence and implemented the intervention. So sometimes it is not easy for one to be able to do a random approach to be able to allocate the research participants into intervention and then control groups. So those are some of the ways you look at. So the research design is very, very important because it gives you the quality of the evidence. As you can see here, we have what we call the pyramid of evidence. And we're talking about groundbreaking research. So if you really want to have groundbreaking research, then we should be looking at what? Randomized controlled trials, which is on top of the pyramid. Yeah? So as it goes up, the evidence increases. At the top there is meta-analysis and systematic reviews. You know, I made mention that let's find another time, probably the next year CPDs or something, we can have a special session on systematic reviews, which is on top of the evidence synthesis. Although you all work in health facilities and all, you can work with academicians so that we can be able to do a systematic review. And even you are supposed to also have what we call evidence synthesis, evidence-based practice. And it is systematic reviews that can be able to give you that proper evidence-based practice that you actually need. So it's something that we can be able to consider with all of that. So if you have define your research design, let's say that you want to do a cross-sectional one and all of that, then you have to state the study population, which study or which groups are you going to collect the data from. And as I said, all of this is also dependent on your research objective or your research question and all of that. So you need to decide on all of that, whether you want to use the entire population, you want to use only a sample, which is a proportion of it. What are the parameters that you want to measure? What kind of statistics are you going to use and all of that? So you need to have what we call your inclusion characteristics. Studies must clearly state if the participant had to have any characteristics or meet certain requirements. So if you are using it under, with children under 5, we say the child must be under 5. The child must be attending child welfare clinics. The child must not be sick and all of that. Those are the inclusion criteria that you can look at. You can also have an exclusion criteria, because this process is to ensure that you are able to identify the right participants that you are looking for, so that you can be able to meet your research objective. So if you don't identify the population very well, you will not be able to get what you are looking for. And it is this part of the research proposal that is very, very important, or your research work that is very, very important. If you don't know what you are looking for, you will not find it. So this particular step is very, very important, or else we go and be looking for other things that you may not be looking for. So this is an example of a description of the study participants. They said the study population will comprise pregnant women who access antenatal care at any of the health facilities in the study area. Participants from antenatal register of each health facility will be eligible if they admit to participate in the study and also meet the inclusion criteria. The inclusion criteria will include pregnant women who have accessed antenatal care for at least 2 times and taken iron supplements. This was a study that we were looking at iron folic acid supplementation among pregnant women. So you see that we have clearly indicated the people that we are looking for. The exclusion criteria will be pregnant women who are on treatment for anemia, who are on admission due to illness, or who may be diagnosed as mentally ill. I mean, you can add more and all of that, but this is an example that we can be able to look at. So if you state your study participants, how will you now select them? Are you going to interview everybody that you see at the health facility, at the antenatal clinic? Are you going to interview everybody? That is where the sampling now comes in, whereby you then select which people that you are going to use. So the sampling is just a portion or a section of the population, but it must be a true representation of the population. So you use that process to be able to identify them. And the 2 key things that you should look for is selecting the right people and selecting the right number of the right people. So this one, we're also looking at the sample size and all of that we are looking at. So sample size, you can decide that you want to go the entire population, which is a census. You know, the Ghana census that they did recently, they interviewed everybody in the country, and that's why we call it census. If they did not come to interview, probably they went to your house and saw someone who also counted you in addition. So a census is to cover everyone and all of that. So you can decide to follow a census, but a census is very expensive. So because it's very expensive, you may have to do sampling to be able to select that. But you must identify your target population. So the target population is a collection of all individual family groups that you are interested in investigating. So it is a population from which you select your sample that you can be able to infer upon. But you need to also identify what your sampling unit is. Are you going to collect the data from the level of households or from a child that is under 5? Or is it mother and child pairs? It's very, very important that you identify the sampling unit. If you don't identify it well, you may not be able to use a proper sampling process. So the sampling frame is when you are not able to get the list of the samples. I mean, the list of the sampling units. So let's say if you are looking at a community-based study whereby you are using a multi-stage cluster sampling or something, you may have to identify the sub-communities that you have in that particular area. So you get the list of them and then sample from each of those communities. Now, when you sample from each of those communities, when you get to the community, you also have to sample the households that you are going to look at. If it is within your hospital, there are several units in the hospital. So there are the adult wards, whatever wards, male and female wards, and all those things. Those can be units, or you can even describe them as clusters that you can be able to select from. So those are some of the things that you have to look at. So a sampling design is a set of rules or procedure that you specify on how you are going to select your sample. It can either be a probability or a non-probability process that you are going to look at. Sample size is the number of participants that you are interested in. So there are 3 factors that can affect your sampling process: the procedure that you use, the sampling size, and all of that. And you only use that when, as I said, you may not be able to cover the entire population. And when you do it, it's more accessible and it should be what? Low cost. And when you also do sampling, it makes it more feasible for you to do your research. It reduces the cost. It can bring about greater accuracy, that is, if you do it well. But there are also disadvantages with sampling. If you're sampling, if you don't do it very well, it may not be representative and the results may not be valid. So it's important that you do it very well to be able to meet your thing that you are looking for. So the sampling, there can be the probability sampling and the non-probability sampling. Those are some of the examples. That non-probability means that you didn't follow a random process to be able to get them. So this diagram shows the different types of sampling that you have. So the non-probability is convenience, out of your own convenience. Snowball is one that let's say when you are investigating something among prostitutes, that is something that nobody will come out openly and say that he or she is, he or she is engaged in that kind of business. So it means that you need to identify someone who is having that particular practice. Then when you go and interview that person, you ask the person may be ready to show you another person. So you use snowballing for topics that you are investigating that people will not openly come out and talk about it. That is where you use snowballing and all of that. So these are more examples. If you are following a probability sampling, whether you use simple, random, systematic, stratified, or cluster sampling. Simple, random, sometimes it can be the toss of a pen, or you can get some, a lottery method to be able to do that. Systematic, you try to identify the individual sampling units and use a process of either picking the first or the fifth person, or every fourth or every fifth person, and all of that. Stratified, you can decide to divide them into male and female, and then you use a random process. Clusters are like, sometimes when you are looking at a study at a district level, you can decide to identify the villages and the communities as clusters. Or if it is a school-based study, you can decide to identify the schools as clusters, and then use the random process of selecting those clusters that you want to do the study on. So this is also another example of describing your sampling design. Your sampling. This is also a study that we are currently conducting in 3 districts. So you see that we're looking at a multi-stage sampling design that will be adopted, in which the districts will be selected through a purposive process. And then all of that, because we had already decided which districts that we'll go to. But now deciding on which communities that we'll go to, we then had to use a random process. And each of the communities were identified as clusters. And then when we now identified the communities, when we then went to the community, we used the WHO cluster random sampling approach. It's also something that has been done by UNICEF too. You identify the center of the community and toss a pen. So the direction in which the pen will go, you follow in that direction. Or you spin a bottle, then you follow in that direction and decide on, the first household that you pick, and then you follow another process again, and then you'll be able to do that. As I said, we'll share them with you, and then you can be able to look at that. You need a sample size, as we all know, the sample size, because you may not be able to have the entire population. So the sample size is very, very important that you can be able to use. There are key things that you consider. You have to consider the confidence interval, the confidence level, the standard deviation, the population size. You can use that to be able to determine your sample size. I think we are all aware of this formula, the Cochrane formula that we normally use to be able to determine the sample size that you will use to be able to determine that. So those are formulas that you can use. But if you are doing an experimental study, you need to calculate what we call, or you need to have what we call the power of the study. So we call it the power analysis. Is your study well powered? Is it like 80% power? 80% power is what is actually accepted. That gives you confidence and all of that. So you need to get the power. And sometimes it's the power that will determine the sample size. So if you want a power of 80%, there is a need for you to have a certain sample size. So that when you are justifying why you came up with this sample size, you will say that because you wanted a power of 80%, you decided, and then with an effect size of this, that is why you came up with what? That sample size and all of that. So it is important that we take note of power analysis when we are doing experimental designs. When we are using experimental designs, we make use of the power. Sometimes you don't need to worry yourself to be able to do the calculations yourself. There are sources online that you can be able to use. I want to send you to those sources so that you can use them. So like the G power, you can be able to put in your power. So let's say if you want 80%, and then the kind of effect size. Effect size is just looking at the change that the intervention will bring so that you can say that there is an impact. Is what you describe as what? The effect size. So, and most of the time you can determine the effect size based on the evidence that you find in the literature. Probably some people have done some interventional studies already in that area. So you can look for the effect size there and say that based on this effect size and at this power, you are choosing this sample size for the control group and then for the intervention group. So it is important that we take note of it. These ones are free online and you can easily be able to get them. I should be wrapping up soon so that we can have time for questions. So after you've described your sampling and all of that, you need to describe your data collection procedures, whereby you tell the reader how the data will be collected, where you go and collect the data, and all of that, how you collect it. Will they sit in a secluded room? All of those processes, that is what we describe as what? The data collection procedure. So you should state clearly all processes or activities that the participants are going to engage in. You have to describe who is going to collect the data. Is it you yourself or you are going to recruit research assistants? What is the qualification of those research assistants that you are going to use to collect that? How will you identify them? The study participants, how are you going to recruit them? What method exactly will you be using to recruit them? Is it a random process or is it a non-probability process? The participant sections to describe what type of sample was used, whether it was a convenient sample or simple random sample and all of that. So the procedures to describe how the sample was actually recruited and all of that. These are more examples. This is an example of how you describe the procedure or the recruitment procedure, whereby this particular study, they said, well, all currently enrolled students were identified and women and men were divided into separate groups. Women were assigned a number from 1 to whatever. Then men were also assigned a number. So through that process, they were not able to select who they want to work with. So this particular example that I gave, they decided to stratify them into men and women, and then selected the people that they actually wanted. That is one approach. And through that, they now contacted them through phone. Then, as I said, you have to indicate who collected the data. Was it you alone? Or let's say if you are doing a study in a school, was it teachers? Was it parents? Did others also collect the data? Research assistants? Did people who collected the data have special training? What sort of training did you actually give them? Was it important that a person who collected the data was male or female and all of that? Did you consider that? So this is also another example here, whereby I will say Alliance's chemical social workers conducted all interviews. They've indicated the people. Social workers and participants were matched by gender, race, ethnicity. You can decide to say that all the people were undergraduate students or they had first degree and that you trained them before they collected the data. So these are more examples that you can be able to look at. Where did you collect the data? Was data collected at school? Did the interview happen at home or at place of the participants? Was the place where data was collected private? Was data collected in a lab at a university? Most of the time you read people's projects or methods and they leave some of these details out. But it's important that we write them and explain where we actually collected some of those data. So this was data were collected at schools, daycare centers, after school programs, and all of that. Because you are describing it in such a way that another person can be able to repeat your study. Did you take any consent? Were participants interviewed or surveyed? Was there a treatment or a therapy? Let's say if you are doing an intervention, an interventional whatever, you need to describe that intervention. The number of times the children received that special diet that you gave them, the time intervals. If you did nutrition education, what forms did you use to be able to give that education? Were materials read aloud? Did they take a test or view a film? Were data collected? Or your proposal that you want to do, will data be collected from participants more than one time? Because, you know, I give you an example of an intervention that we took data 3 times. Baseline after the intervention and 4 weeks after the intervention that we looked at. These are more examples that you can be able to refer to. Then you have to show whether the data were actually collected in groups. It tells where the data was actually collected, how the informed consent was achieved, and all of that. You need to explain all of those things. So most of the time, when you are describing the data collection procedure, it's difficult to tell how detailed you should go. But sometimes you just need to balance and probably looking at previous researchers, what did they really do, so that can be able to support you to be able to do your data. So you've described the procedure and all of that. You now have to describe the methods, the data collection methods. Some people always want to call them data collection tools. Others also call them data collection techniques and all of that. So what methods are you using? Is it participatory methods, records and secondary data? Was it observation? Was it a survey or interview? Focus groups? All of these approaches depend on the research question and the objective. So if the research question, you are looking at evaluating diet or something, then you may have to use what? A food frequency questionnaire. You may have to use 24-hour dietary record, whatever. Those are some of the methods that you can be able to use. This is also another example that we picked from one of our studies, whereby data was collected by means of a questionnaire or a survey instrument. A questionnaire sometimes is described as a survey instrument. So the questionnaire evaluated the socio-demographic characteristics of the participants. Then it also assessed what their knowledge. So there were 11 items that assessed the knowledge of the participants. They were indicated what score a correct answer was actually given. Then there was also 14 items that assessed what we call food safety. Then there were 12 items that assessed participants' attitude towards food safety. So all the key variables that you have identified, you need to explain the kinds of methods that you are going to use to collect those key variables. So after describing your methods and everything, you then go to what? Data analysis. How will you analyze the data? So the purpose of data analysis is to answer the research questions and to help determine the trends and relationships among the variables. That is what the data analysis is all about. It helps you to summarize the results and it helps you to recognize underlying trends. Imagine you went and interviewed 100 people and you want to report each of them. I mean, it will be difficult for you to read through it. But when you do data analysis, you can be able to combine, you can be able to find averages, you can be able to find means, you can be able to find frequencies and all of that. So for you, before you do your data analysis, your research question is still important. So the iterative process or the cascading effect is still here. Variables to be well-defined. Data collection you have completed, because you don't have business looking at data analysis if you have not completed your data collection. It's only when you are doing a qualitative interview that you can be doing the two hand in hand, a qualitative study. But if it is quantitative study, you must finish your data collection before you look at that. What is your sample size? How many variables were investigated? Because the sample size will determine the kind of statistical tools that you use. And also it is important that you identify that. Then you also have to identify your variables, as we have explained earlier on, which of them is independent variable and which of them is a dependent variable. that will determine whether you should, the kind of study design that you should use. So it's important that you have to indicate whether your outcome variable is numerical or is categorical. All of these have an impact on the kinds of study designs that is used. So categorical variables are those that takes 2 categories or 3 or more categories. So as you can see, sex, marital status, income category. You can have somebody who is between male and female, or you can have somebody who is married and not married. No, you are either married or you are not married. You are either male or you are not, or you are a female. So you have categorized the people. Continuous, that is those ones that take the form of the number line. So the age, the income level, the weight, the height, all of those ones are examples of continuous variables. As I said, the kinds of variables that you are looking at will determine the statistical tools that you'll be using. Nominal is just data that is presented in the form of an amount or a quantity. Ordinal is data that is represented in an ordered series and all of that. So for your data analysis, you can have descriptive and you can have inferential. Descriptive, you are just describing the data. That's where sometimes we'll talk about frequencies, we'll talk about means and all of that. Those ones are descriptive statistics that we make use of. Inferential is where you can use maybe ANOVA, you can use student t-test, logistic regression, you are inferring. So that is what we describe as what inferential statistics. And in your proposal, it is important that you describe all of these things, that this is what you are going to do. And as I said, all of these depends on your objective, and then it also depends on what the kinds of data that it is. Let's say that if your objective is to describe the prevalence of stunting in children, so you can't come and say you are going to use student t-test to determine the prevalence of stunting. No, you can only use descriptive statistics of frequencies and percentages. But if you want to know factors that are associated with stunting, then that is where you can then use your inferential statistics, whether you want to use a chi-square, you want to use student t-test to be able to do that. So the descriptive is just to describe the data and all of that. When you pick the slides, you can have more information on that. Inferential, as I said, you are trying to identify the factors that are associated with a particular outcome and all of that. So with inferential, you should know what your independent are and what your outcome variables are. So it allows for comparisons across the variables. It allows for hypothesis testing and all of that. That is what the inferential is all about. So usually I share with people this sort of table that will tell you the kind of data and the kinds of statistical tools that you can be able to use. So interval or continuous, you use t-test if there are 2 groups, and then ANOVA if there are more than 3 groups. You have Mann-Whitney U-test and all of these are examples of tests that you can be able to use. This is also another table that you can be able to adopt. So let's say later on, if you are struggling with what kinds of statistical tools to use and all of that, you can make reference to this table so that you can be able to get that. So these are more examples of the things that you can put in your data analysis. So as I said, there's always an example. So data collected will be analyzed using SPSS. You need to identify the software. And then R software will be used to analyze all data. They said descriptive and inferential analysis will be conducted for this study. Descriptive and what inferential. Continuous variables will be described as mean, and then whatever distribution. Then they say categorical variables will also be indicated in frequencies and percentages. Because if the data is categorical, you cannot have a mean. Because you can't have mean male and female. No, you can't have mean gender. It's either there are 20 men or there are 40 women. So you can only use frequencies and percentages to be able to compare that. To be able to describe that data. The comparisons between continuous variables will be conducted using the student t-test or Mann-Whitney test, ANOVA or Krustal, Wallace test. All of these are examples that we are using. You see here, we are broad and we are given different statistical tools because we are yet to go and collect the data. But when you collect the data and you know the kinds of variables you are investigating and what you are looking for, you can become more specific and decide which kinds of statistical tools that you will be using. So this is also another example of a data analysis example. This is for a research that has been conducted and it is also published. We're looking at women dietary diversity scores and all of that. That describes the kinds of data analysis tools that we use. So as I indicated earlier on, ethics is very, very important. Ethical approval, informed consent. Once you are dealing with human beings, it is important that you get the ethics. So you write it in that ethics application, you give the proposal, your data collection tools for another group to look at it, to review it, and say that what you are doing, you are not going to cause harm to human beings. This one is just done to prevent you from causing harm to human beings. There was some time passed before this ethics came. People would just be walking because they wanted to study about the anatomy of the body. They were just going to catch slaves and cut them and be able to know how the heart is looking like and all of that. Those early anatomies and whatever, those were some of the things they were doing, which does not protect the integrity of the human being. It causes harm. So somebody have to look at the work. Don't think that harm is just that physical impact that you have on the individual. Harm can also be psychological. So your questions that you are asking the research participant can have a psychological impact on the person. So sometimes don't say that because my research is interviews and focus groups, I don't need to collect ethics. It's very, very important. Whatever research that is involving human beings, you have to collect what ethics. In fact, even if it is involving animals, rats, those who do the laboratory study and all of that, they still need to collect ethics approval. So it's very, very important. And you cannot publish it in any high impact journal when you don't get the ethics approval, because the journal will ask for it and all of that. So you can also do the pre-testing of your methodology to be able to see whatever is there. So you need to discuss the significance of your study. Sometimes some of this significance can actually come as part of the problem statement that you are stating, but you can have a separate section whereby you talk about the significance or the implications of your study. So you state the practical and the theoretical importance of it, explain the usefulness of it and all of that. So this is an example of significance. The evidence generated from this study will make available culturally sensitive interventions that will contribute to reducing the rising prevalence of childhood obesity. This will additionally inform clinical practice and consequently the design of future interventions. Because if you are not able to state this clinical significance, especially when you are going for a funder, for someone to fund you, if you're not able to explain this significance of your study very well, nobody is going to fund you. Nobody is going to support you. So it is important that you are able to clearly state this point. Sometimes you can link it to the Sustainable Development Goals, because there are some people who are always interested in that. So if you're able to link it up that way, you can be able to get the funding that you are needing. And of course, you must have a work plan. You know, we're still looking at the proposal, although at some points I was making mention of already published work. But your plan, what is your work plan? You have to indicate that in the proposal. So you, within the first month, you have finished your proposal development. You have applied for ethics in the second month, in the third month. You collect data for 6 months. So usually you need to indicate all of this. So we can use what we normally call the GAND chart that you can use to get that sort of map out. So there you come. So this is an example of a GAND chart that indicates all the activities on the first column. And then you have the row, the top row being the month or the time within which you can be able to do that. So you see that preparation of the thesis proposal, presentation of the thesis, submission of the thesis, data collection, data analysis, report writing, submission of thesis, presentation of what the thesis that they have indicated up to May 2016 that they will be able to finish. So you need to always have this map. It's not only research proposals, but even when you are writing a proposal for grants, funding, and all of that, you need to indicate this timeline. And of course, you need to also add your budget. I didn't talk about the budget, but the budget is very, very important. It's a budget that will tell us how much you are going to spend to be able to what do you call it? To be able to carry out your work. So if you are going for funding, the funder would like to know how much will you be able to use to do this work that you want to do. Are your costs appropriate with the research objectives that you want to really get? So when you finish your data analysis and everything, you now need to report the results. So you report it in the form of, as we indicated, it can be in the form of tables, in the form of figures, in the form of whatever. Then you begin to interpret the results. Then the interpretation will then give you what you can be able to do with those results. And then you also need to plan how you are going to disseminate those results. Is it going to be through progress report? Is it going to be morning meetings at the hospital? Is it going to be conferences that you are going to attend? Is it going to be publications, research publications, seminars, workshops? It's very, very important. And let me add one thing. We don't always talk about this, but it's very, very important. You go to social media with your research findings. Social media with your research findings. Social media is not only for us to come and give information about events and all those things. You can publish your research on social media. You can do a TikTok, some 5 minutes TikTok, or is it 1 minute or 2 minutes, whereby you describe or you mention your research findings. You can decide to have a channel through TikTok that you can be able to present that. You can go to Twitter. You can go to LinkedIn, whereby you report your findings. That way you are getting a lot of people to know what you have done. And probably, who knows, through that sort of publication, you can get a collaborator from another place. So please, let's not do research and keep it to ourselves. And let's not feel that it is only when you are publishing in a journal or whatever, that is the only place that you can be able to publish your work. The social media handle is something that you can be able to use. Your WhatsApp status, you can be able to put that. Just some pointy or some catchy outcome from your study, you can put it on your WhatsApp status. I mean, status or update, so that you can be able to let as many people as possible get to know what you are doing. Yes. So that is the end. I think the rest is just references, whereby you have to provide a list of all sources that were cited. The references in your text can be numbered, as I said, whether you are using a Vancouver system, as I showed in one of the examples, or it could also follow the APA style that most of us are actually used to. These are separate sections that probably we may have to have time to look at, but I think everybody should be comfortable with references. Annexes, you can decide to put your interview schedule, your questionnaires, your informed consent, the approval letter that you have gotten. Those are some of the places that you can put your annexes and all of that. So I think the plan for utilization, I think I have already explained that. So I would like to bring my presentation to an end. It's been a very long one. I apologize for the long presentation, but sometimes you don't know what you are leaving out and what you should also present. So I bring my presentation to an end and ask for questions. Yeah.
All right. Thank you so much, Professor Victor Mogre, for the very detailed, insightful, and very educative presentation. In fact, we are really honored having you this evening coming to talk to us about health research. I believe that it was a very broad topic, but you did your best by covering all the key aspects. Topics like this, if you are not careful, it could even take 3 hours. So we appreciate the fact that it was a broad topic and that there will be an extension of the time. So we are very grateful for the presentation. I mean, I have learned a lot, and I believe that there's always a disconnect between clinicians and researchers. And that is what I have always been advocating for, whether there could be a collaborative effort between researchers and those of us in the clinic. Because at Legon, we sit on data, recently we're compiling our reports on the number of obesity cases and all that, and I was just asking myself, what happens after submitting this report to the medical director? It ends there. So I think that it will be great that we come together in a form of collaborative manner, such that, data from clinic can be used for research, and that can be made available so that the evidence-based practice we are always talking about will be put to good use. Obviously, without evidence-based dietetic or nutrition practice will be a mirage. So it's a very important topic, and I see that a lot of people were interested. In fact, we even exceeded the maximum limit on the page, and due to technical hinges, we couldn't even add the numbers. So we'll make the presentation available as well as the link so that people who could not follow us will still be on the same page. It's a topic that attracts a lot of interest, and I believe that in the near future, we would have to look at similar topics, especially with the systematic reviews that you were talking about. So thank you so much. There are some few, comments in the chat box commending the presentation. So from the Ghana Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics, he's saying that great and in-depth presentation. Felicia is saying, thank you, Prof. Abdul Rauf is saying, excellent presentation, Prof. No apologies needed. It's a very broad topic. Just as I said, you did a great job. Thank you. From Ghana, Canada Ghana Nutrition Center. And then we have thank you, Prof, from the Ghana Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics. Thanks for the presentation from Ida. Then we also have Lydia saying thank you, Prof. And all the comment is full of, very, appreciated thanks for the good job that you have done. So at this point, we would like to take questions. Please, let's open up. There is no wrong question. If anything bothers your mind on research, please feel free. I have some academicians on the platform. I want you to share your experiences as to how we can make nutrition and dietetic research very powerful and how we can all collaborate. So please feel free to share your views. So the floor is open for questions. So you can just raise up your hand and then we'll give you the chance to ask your question. Thank you so much. So it's time for questions. All right, so as we wait, Prof, there are certain questions I would like to ask. You mentioned that methods should be used for quantitative research, whilst methodology for qualitative research. So the question is, what happens if you are using a mixed method? What do you write? Because I think that in most cases, we've been using either methodology or methods. And I'm trying to publish a paper and I have methodology on it. Meanwhile, it's more of a quantitative research. So I'm just wondering, this mistake has been happening all over. And so what do you do with this mixed method?
Yes, so I think that is a good one. Especially, as I said, some of us are actually pragmatics, and I think that is what you are looking at, the mixed methods approach. Yes, so sometimes depending on where you are going to submit it to. So let's say, as you are saying that you are going to submit it to a journal or something, look at what they say you should do. If they say you should put methods, you just put methods there. Sometimes these things, it is not cast in stone that you must follow this way or you must follow that way. I was only just drawing your attention, especially if you go completely qualitative, then it's better you just describe that it's a methodology. And know the qualitative approaches, when they go to their methods, when you go to the method sections, you have a lot of write-up, whereby they will not only describe the study design, they will describe the methodological approach, whereby they will describe the theory behind that particular methodological approach. You see, they will take some time to describe. Let's say if they are following ethnography, they will take some time to describe the ethnographic approach. They will take some time to explain it. If they are using what do you call it, phenomenology or whatever, they will also describe all of those methods, whereby, sometimes they talk about this epistemology, they talk about this imperious people and the realists and all of that. So some of these things, you may not need to worry your head so much to be able to understand some of these concepts. It's just a matter of knowing what is expected to be able to meet your objectives, to be able to answer your research questions. So I would say that look at the requirement of where you want to submit it. If they say methods, you describe it as methods. If they say you should describe it as methodology, you describe it as such. But
thank you so
that
much.
description is for those that have made a clear-cut approach, whether they are following a quantitative or a qualitative, strict qualitative approach. Yeah.
All right. Thank you so much. So it means you should always make sure you look at the journal guidelines. That will determine whether you use the methods or methodology. Thank you so much. I think there's a hand up from Dr. Kasim Abdullahi from the University of Cape Coast. Dr. Kasim, please, you can go ahead and ask your question.
Yes, thank you very much, Maxwell, and thank you so much, Prof. It's been an insightful one, and we have really learned a lot, especially those of us who have a lot of interest in research, or those of us in academia. I have a question that I want to ask Prof. I have realized that when you are writing a proposal for a grant, usually their requirement or the structure that they want you to follow doesn't sometimes demand all these details. However, there are sections that they will want you to really pay much attention, even if they want you to write all the sections as you have provided. Some of those sections are just some small marks or something that are attached. So can you just comment on that, those sections that are so relevant if it is about a grant proposal? And recently I just noticed that there was some proposal that it was a concept that was requested. So when the concept was given, just like about 1 page, and then they called for a presentation for a discussion. And from that, the grant was awarded without really requesting for a detailed proposal. So can you please comment on that? Thank you.
All right, thank you. Sometimes it's quite difficult to understand what the funder is looking for. But you have to always get it from experience. And that's why sometimes we say that for winning grants, it doesn't just take someone who have not had the experience before to be able to get it. You always need to ride on the back of someone who have had the experience of working with them, and you can be able to get it. It's hardly possible for, I'm not saying that it is not possible, but it's very rare for someone who have never worked with them or who have never won a grant to be able to just apply once and be able to get it at once. So there's always a need to work with someone. So with regards to grant proposals, as you indicated, it depends on the requirements of the funder, what they really want you to write upon or to write about. Of course, where you want to do the study is going to be very important. So you need to describe where you are going to do the study. You need to talk about the population in which you want to conduct the study on, because the funder is looking at what can be able to make a strong impact, especially if it is about public health. So it's looking at in what population, which vulnerable population will it be able to have the needed impact that they are looking at for. There's one that we worked on with a partner from Southampton, where we emphasize on the last mile district. And what we meant by the last mile district was districts or communities that are difficult to access, communities that are always left out with regards to research. A lot of people don't go there because you find it difficult to access those communities. So it is important, depending on the objective or the aim of what you want to do, you have to bring out that point very clearly. And because we were looking at the last mile communities, we had to describe and explain why we are describing that community as what? Last mile. So the study area is very important, the study population, and then sometimes you don't need to worry so much about the data, the data collection methods. You can just mention them briefly to be able to meet the objectives that you are looking for. Sampling, you may describe it a bit briefly and all of that. And then just some brief description of the sort of data analysis that you'll be looking at. But you need to focus on the significance. For grants applications, the significance is very, very important. If you are not able to clearly explain what the significance is all about, then it may not be possible for you to be able to get it. And sometimes some of them assume that, just like the example that you gave, it's just one-page concept. So the one that you should be able to identify those key areas that you want to put, that can be able to consider them to be able to get. So when they know that your significance is very, very okay and you've written it well, even if the methods are not well described, they may end up giving it to you. So it is important that we try to focus on some of those areas. Kasim, have I been able to make things clear to you?
Yeah. Yes. Thank you very much, Prof. Yes,
okay.
Thank you.
All right, thank you so much, Prof. So we go to, there are some questions in the chat box I would want us to address. So someone, Ghana Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics is asking, Prof, regarding submission of abstract for conferences, how can clinicians participate?
Oh, submitting of conferences, abstract for conferences. Yeah, okay. How can they participate?
Yes.
Okay. In what form? Is it that they want to participate as just participants or also to be able to present? If you want to be able to present, then it would be nice that you have some research to share. So you don't have to wait for them to announce the conference before you start looking for the data. You sort of already planned ahead in time. You should let research be part of your day-to-day activities. It should be part of what you do. So you are designing something to collect some data. I remember you made mention that you were looking at, you gave a report on obesity or something. Maxwell.
Yeah.
So the next time you are designing it, think of research in it. Okay. That what key variables should I collect that can be able to support a research report. So, sometimes when you are collecting those data, you may not think of maybe the age of the child, you may not think of the occupation of the child's mother and all of that. So you need to design a checklist already that you have those key points that can be able to help you to be able to make it a proper research. So other variables that you don't generally collect when it comes to the routine data that you collect at the hospital, you have to try to add some of those things so that it can be able to form the research that we want to do. And sometimes you can get this by reading other articles, other hospital-based articles, and see the sort of data they actually collected. Then you can also include that in your data collection tool, or is it a checklist that you are actually going to develop? So you can only, you can be able to participate in the conferences if you have submitted work that you want to actually be able to present. So that when you submit the work, then the reviewers can actually do a review of it and give you the opportunity either to present orally or to present through a poster. Or else you can also decide to just attend that kind of conference and see what they do there, some of the things that they have been looking at for, so that next year you can be able to plan to attend. Conferences is one of the ways by which you can report the research findings. And you see that it is at the tail end of the research process. So you will not be able to report any evidence if you have not followed all those steps. And all those steps does not take 3 weeks or maybe a week for you to be able to get it. It comes with a kind of planning. And I would encourage that you should try to work with those people who work in the university, the academics. You people are sitting on data, tons of data. You don't need to struggle to be able to get the research participants. So when you work with us, we can be able to help you design the research proposal that you can be able to get the ethics, and then you'll be able to get the data that you are looking for. Yeah.
All right. Thank you so much. There's another question that is from Bernice. She's asking, please, my question is if the topic you want to research on doesn't have literature review, how do you go about it, please? I can relate with this. I see a lot of students come to the hospital and they'll come and tell you that they are really struggling. And it will be very good to know how to go about this. Yeah.
Oh, so if there is no literature on it, then you are on the way to coming up with groundbreaking research. But you just can't say that you didn't come across any literature. You need to prove it. So you need to search and search very well. Probably the search that you did was limited. You did not really do the searches very well. So sometimes you need to look for certain databases that you can be able to do academic research on. So don't end your research at Google. Google, I mean, can give you information, but it is not an academic database for you to be able to search articles. So some of the databases that you can be looking at is PubMed. PubMed is free. PubMed is one of the biggest databases that actually indexes medical and health research articles. So when you go to PubMed, you get the key words that is coming from the topic. You need to get the keywords. And sometimes don't just use only the keywords. You need to also get the synonyms of those keywords. So you create a table, you have the first keyword from the topic, the second keyword. So let's say if I'm looking at school-based food and nutrition education impact on children. So school-based food and nutrition education is a keyword. Children is a keyword. What do we call it? Impact. I can put, or let's say if I'm looking at their impact on diet. So diet is also a keyword. What are some of the other ways that people can describe diet? Those are the synonyms. And you then put that, and then you go to your PubMed, which is one of the open access databases, and then you can be able to key the keywords there through a certain search process. As I said, if we have another time, we can be able to have this process that I will demonstrate to you how you can search in some of those databases. But I just need to go there with the keywords, then you can be able to do the searches and all of that. Apart from PubMed, you can also go to Google Scholar. You know, Google has an academic site that we call it Google Scholar. So that is also another place that you can go and do the searches. So if you do all of that and you are not able to find anything that is relating to your work, you can confidently say that you did extensive literature search and you didn't find any work. Or sometimes you can find some work that is in relation to what you have been doing, but it's not direct. So you can cite that work and say that, oh, somebody did this work, but the person didn't look at this and that and that. And I'll be surprised in this age that you will find a research topic that nobody have done it before. There's always someone out there. Probably you have not really come across it yet. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Prof. I think to add to this, most of the problem is always about how they do the searching.
Yes.
The Boolean operators, use of the N and the O together,
the Boolean operators
really helps a lot. Yeah.
Yes.
So if you are not sure of how to do the search, please contact someone who is very experienced in research. The person will be able to help you out. Thank you so much. There's another question that is asking, in an abstract writing to study the need for healthy food and diet in Ghanaian health systems, what method of study will be appropriate for such a study? Trying to study the need for healthier food and diet in Ghanaian health systems.
Oh, can you come again? That he's writing what, an abstract?
So this from Seram, she's asking that in a study to study the need for healthier food and diet in a Ghanaian health systems, what method of study will be appropriate for such a study? You want to investigate the need for healthier food and diet in Ghanaian health systems. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, so with that, we'll have to know what, this is just the topic. We'll have to know what the objectives are and the research questions that you want to answer. So from the way you have explained, it looks like a qualitative approach to me based on the topic that you have done. You are looking at the needs and all of that. And sometimes needs, for example, like this, you may not be able to use quantitative approaches to be able to get it so well, because you may not be able to get an exhaustive list of needs that you will be able to measure how many people have got these needs, how many people don't have these needs. So the best approach would be a qualitative approach, whereby you interview the key people or the participants that you are interested in, so that they can be able to identify whether there is a need for health and nutrition or diet and nutrition, whatever, into the health systems. So all those key people that will be involved, like probably if you are looking at it at the district level, you look at the district health director, the nutrition officer, those key informants. So you can describe it as key informant interviews. If it's also at the hospital, you look at the health workers there, the doctors, the nurses, all of that, that you can be able to interview them. So looking at what you have presented, it looks like a qualitative approach to me. But as I've indicated in the presentation, we'll have to know the specific objectives, the research questions that you really want to answer. So when we're able to get those research questions, it can help us be able to decide on which topic that we can be able to look at. So that is just what I have to say. But from what you have indicated, it looks like a qualitative approach where you may have to do interviews, focus groups, discussions, or something. Yeah.
All right. So I think we'll be bringing the meeting to an end in the next few minutes, let's say about 5-10 minutes. But I want to open the floor. I mean, having had this presentation, how do we have a collaborative effort between clinicians and researchers? Because we sit on data, but the data never get published. And sometimes patients come in and ask you, I mean, what's the nutritional profile of Asana? And then what's the implications on health? You go in there, there's no data available. And you begin to ask yourself, there are so many wild fruit in the nuts that I come from that we don't even know the nutritional profile, but people are eating it. Some will come and tell you it's good for diabetes. You go in there, there's no data. And it is, we have to produce that data because the people in Europe don't know that fruit. So the question is, in the next 5 to 10 minutes, how do we form a collaborative effort to steady search data? One thing I've realized, there's a lot of community-based interventions. But when it comes to data on clinic, I mean, research that has to do with clinical practice in terms of a particular diet, it's very, very scanty. And I think that we need to bridge that gap. Otherwise, it gets to a point in the practice, it's quite very difficult. So please, academicians, let's come together. Let's share our opinions because we need to be able to practice the evidence-based dietetic practice. And without data, without research, it will be very difficult. So you can share your opinions. Maybe Prof can also come in, the collaborative effort. How do we go about it?
Yeah,
and
so
I think it should be intentional, you know.
Yeah, for that one, I agree. It should be intentional. Before I come to that, somebody was also, somebody asked about how they can be able to participate in those conferences and all of that, which I gave an explanation of. You should have had some data, but sometimes based on the data that you have collected, like the one Maxwell was talking about, the obesity that you've looked at, and probably some of the cases that you have managed, if you can be able to de-identify them and probably get through some 1 or 2 approvals at the hospital level, you can be able to make a presentation of that nature. If you're able to make sure that the data is de-identified, you can be able to make presentation based on what you have already managed and the data that you have already actually collected. But it's just that they may have some limitations, but it may be good to do when you go and do the presentation, if you go and do the presentation, they may give you some 1 or 2 ideas, said that when you come back, you can improve your system so that the next time you can be able to have that extensive data that you want to really collect. And sometimes you can just write a broad proposal. When you may be having challenges with ethics, you can write a broad proposal and submit it for the ethics. And then when they grant it, you can then use that one to be able to collect as much information as possible that you are looking for. So with regards to the collaboration, as I said, it has to be intentional. So we would need to, not only from just, those at the clinical level, but we those also in academia, we need to reach out to you. We need to be able to work with you and then support each other. And through that process, we can be able to advance the nutrition research that we really want to advance. So we need to have that intentional approach. Yeah.
All right. Thank you so much, Prof. I think we'll be bringing the meeting to an end unless somebody has anything to add on this. Somebody just suggested that we should make this discussion in our next conference in Kumasi. And I think I'll alert the executives. It's very important we look at it. One issue that came up is the issue of oils. You know, a time came we didn't even know which oil is good because we don't have data. And then we will be promoting the ones that have data. Then we'll come and say that our own was not good. And a particular professor brought a video. It became a whole lot of controversies. So I think that it is our responsibility to make the data available so that we can be able to support some of our local foods. There are so many foods in Ghana. When you are looking for nutritional profile, you won't get anything. Some of them, the Nigerians are doing very well. So you get some data from our Nigerian brothers. When you come to Ghana, you will search and search, there's nothing. It's only community-based interventions, nothing about, some of the foods we have and all that. So I think as dietitians and nutritionists, we have a responsibility and we need to bridge that gap. So let me just see if there's anybody's honest. Otherwise, our time is already fast spent. We would probably bring the meeting to an end. All right. So we want to thank Prof. Victor Mogri so much for the time. We are so grateful for your time. I mean, we've spent over 2 hours of your time, and it's been very insightful and educative. We will be knocking on your door anytime soon again. I see that there's a lot of interest, and you realize that the number picked, a lot of people couldn't even join. And this is one of the CPDs that has been well patronized simply because of the topic. So once we identify the interest of the people, we will be knocking at your door, hopefully somewhere next year or anytime soon, so that we will be able to address some of these topics. So we want to thank you so much for your time. And we are so grateful for this very insightful presentation. Now, to everyone on call, I want to thank you for your time. We are grateful for you joining. We'll make the presentation available and the link as well, so that those who missed because of the participant limit can be able to get the resources available. So God bless us all and good night to everyone. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Maxwell. And
thank you,
thank you for actually having me. As I said, I'm available for any other topic that you want me to look at. And then I can also be reached at any point. You can share my email address and my contact with everyone, so that if there is anything, they can be able to actually contact, and we can be able to collaborate and be able to network on that. Yeah.
Well noted. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Please, can you share the registration link so that some of us are joined late?
Yes. In the next few minutes, I'm going to put it there, so you can stay and fill it before you leave. So I'm just putting it right away.
All right, then. Good night.
All right, Prof. Thank you so much.
I'm leaving. Yeah. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much. Thank
Yeah.
you. Thank you. Bye. So the registration link is on. So those of you who are yet to fill, please kindly do that. I'll be on in the next 5 to 10 minutes, so that when you are done, then we'll bring the meeting. I'll end the meeting. So you still have time. You can fill in your attendance sheet. We'll make all the resources available, so watch out for it.